Digital photography made simple.
Hello, welcome back to D1to1. Today we're going to talk about what is a wide-angle lens and how to use it more creatively. Now, any wide-angle lens is a lens that is wider than what our eye sees normally. Now let's discuss how most people would take a wide-angle shot of a group. What happens is they tend to go to the wide end trying to fit everything into that shot, and we might get a little bit of distortion at the end. Take a look at that shot. As you can see from our photograph, we have a sense of forced distortion. This occurs due to the curvature of the lens, and the wider the lens is, the more distortion we're going to get.
Like on this lens we have. Take a look at how it curves in at the edges, because the lens itself is actually bending our image. Now this kind of distortion occurs on all cameras, whether we have an SLR or a compact camera. However, on SLRs, we actually can see the focal lengths on the lens themselves, whether they are a zoom lens or a fixed lens. But on compact cameras like this one, we have to toggle between what's called W for wide and T for telephoto. However, some cameras you might see a symbol of one tree as opposed to a symbol of many trees, and the many trees would be your wide angle. But distortion has a destructive and constructive aspect to it. The image we showed you earlier has a destructive tone because the distortion has altered the shape of the people at the edges of the frame. Now, a way we can correct an image like we saw is to physically step back and give ourselves a little bit more room. A good rule of thumb would be to supply some space on either edge, sort of one body width of empty space to the people size. This way, if we ever want to crop a shot later on, say we want to put a group shot in a perfect 8x10 frame, we're not going to sacrifice anybody out of the shot, and we don't want to cut anyone out of our group shot.
Now let's show you how distortion could be more constructive in our images when we use a wide-angle lens. Here's a photograph showing you how distortion wasn't fully taken advantage of to make a creative shot. Now, as you can see in our next image, we've taken advantage of that distortion to make a more creative image. Take a look. Now, we expressed many times here on D1to1 how using the weight of importance plays a major role in our images. When we use a wide-angle lens, we like to get a super sense of weight of importance like you saw in our last image, which will give us a more creative shot.
Distortion allows us to obtain a unique dynamic effect, a larger-than-life sense to our image. And we use this concept when we approach landscaped images also, because we visually accept how the elements relate to one another in a shot. Here, take a look at our first sample to show you what we mean. But if we add a sense of proportion of an element we recognize, like a person, we now see a difference in the relationship of these elements where we recognize the scale of our image. Although now we can take advantage of our wide-angle lens and create a hyper sense of size with our subject matter and create a more dynamic image in a shot like this one. Knowing how to use our wide-angle lens creatively allows us to create an image with a more dramatic sense to our shot. And we go from taking just an ordinary image to an image with a wow effect.
Now, knowing your physical space around you is as important as knowing your camera. Here at D1to1, we want to make sure you're a good photographer, not a snapshot shooter. Next time you use a wide-angle lens, make sure you take advantage of some of the tips you just learned so you can take those great dramatic images.
Now take a look at our other videos on point of view and proportion to help guide you in being a little more creative with your wide-angle lens.
So be a D1to1 photographer, and we look forward to seeing you again here on D1to1.